Okay, so we've all heard of the 10 stages of genocide. Yes? If you don't know what that is, here's a fancy chart of all of the 10 stages, and we'll go through each of them very quickly. Number 1 is classification, which is the disrespect of differences between people and the separation of us versus them, which we know Israel upholds through its apartheid system. The second is symbolization, which is the use of terms or symbols to create a visual representation of the hatred for an identified group. Israel does this through calling Palestinians Arabs or Arab Israelis rather than Palestinians. They refuse to say Palestinians and to acknowledge our existence. They also do this through giving Palestinians different types of IDs, which grant them or deny them access to certain parts of Palestine simply because of the fact that they are Palestinian. Number 3 is discrimination, in which the dominant group denies civil rights and even citizenship to the identified group. And again, we know that Israel upholds this through its apartheid system, and that Palestinians, once again, are given different IDs depending on where they live in Palestine, which denies them access to certain areas of Palestine. For example, a Palestinian living in Gaza has a different ID than a Palestinian living in occupied Palestine, and they cannot upgrade their ID to gain access into areas like Jerusalem. Which, by the way, since we're on the topic of rights, not only does Israel deny Palestinians civil rights, but they also deny Palestinians access to basic human rights like water. Number 4 is dehumanization, which is when the dominant group strips the identified group of their human rights, which we just talked about via access to water, and they also strip them of dignity. We have heard top Israeli government officials referring to Palestinians as human animals. Number 5 is organization, which is when the state plans the genocide of a people. Genocides are always planned. And as we know, a lot of information has been coming out about how Israel knew about Hamas plans pre-October 7th, let it happen, and what their plans were for retaliation, and what their plans are for the future of Gaza. Number 6 is polarization, which is the use of propaganda created by hate groups in order to demonize the identified group of people. I have no less than 20-something videos on propaganda on my page, but quick recap, the Israeli government came out with fabricated stories and unsubstantiated claims of things like 40 beheaded babies and sexual violence being used as an organized tactic of war. Number 7 is preparation, which kind of ties into the organization aspect of the 10 steps of genocide, except that this one is for the plans of ethnic cleansing. And we see that in the way that Israel has been having discussions and negotiations with outside countries, asking them to absorb Palestinians from Gaza. Number 8 is persecution, which is when victims are identified based on ethnicity or religion, and they are then put on execution lists, or they are imprisoned, or they are separated into ghettos, which we know, again, Israel is doing all of this. We have seen videos of Palestinian men being stripped down, blindfolded, executed point blank in an open field. We are seeing Palestinians in Gaza being pushed into a central location that is then bombed. We are seeing Palestinians throughout occupied Palestine who are losing their homes and being imprisoned, kidnapped. Another massively important component of persecution is the fact that Palestinians are being starved in Gaza right now. Food, water is not allowed in, and if Palestinians have not died from bombs, they will die of starvation. Number 9 is extermination, in which the dominant group or the hate group murders their identified victims through a campaign of deliberate and systemic violence. And I don't know what other example you need other than nearly 30,000 Palestinians being murdered through bombs sent from the US to Israel to then be dropped on Gaza, which again was a city of 2.3 million civilians, many of whom were already refugees, and over half of them were children. Number 10 is denial, which I don't think requires much of an explanation, but it is the reason why I created this entire video in the first place. We are officially at the 10th stage of genocide, in the 10 stages of what genocide is on Genocide Watch. And I'm going to show you a video that prompted me to make this one.
Africa's filed this 84-page lawsuit against Israel, accusing them of genocide. Israel says that this is blood libel. Does Washington agree? And where does this put Washington and Pretoria?
We find this submission meritless, counterproductive, and completely without any basis in fact whatsoever.
Brian.
As I'm sure you've heard, South Africa has filed a case of genocide against Israel. In their case, South Africa uses the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. This is the document that was drawn up after World War II and the Holocaust that South Africa is using in this case. And we're going to focus on Article 2, which gives 5 identifying factors of when a country is participating in active genocide. And it's a little bit different than the 10 stages that we just went through. But my point in showing you all of this is that no matter which way we describe what genocide is, Israel is upholding every single point across the board. Now, in order to be considered participating or actively engaging in genocide, you only have to be committing one of these 5 points. Israel is committing all 5. When it comes to point A, which is killing members of the group, and point B, which is causing serious bodily and mental harm to the group, we know that Israel is doing this through the dropping of bombs. One would argue that the bombing of Gaza causing death or the displacement of Palestinians who survived those bombs is also in line with point C, which is deliberately inflicting harsh living conditions on a group of people that is meant to destroy the entirety of that group of people. But we can also use the fact that Israel is starving Gaza for point C. These last 2 points are really unique, and I think they might actually be the grossest on the list. Point D being the imposition of measures intended to prevent births of the group of people that are experiencing the genocide. If you weren't aware, there are roughly 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza. Doctors are saying that there are at least 180 births happening every single day. And Israel has completely decimated the entirety of the healthcare system in Gaza, which means that women are giving birth in insanely horrible, dangerous, unsanitary conditions. They are not able to have access to pain management. They are having C-sections without anesthesia. They are dying in childbirth, and their children are dying. All of this is targeted. All of this is to prevent the birth and the expansion of the Palestinian population. Just a reminder that this isn't just happening in Gaza. For years, Palestinian women have been forced to give birth at checkpoints because Israel denies them entry to a checkpoint to reach a hospital to give birth. And point E, which is unfathomable, is the forcible transfer of children of the group experiencing the genocide into another group. And while it has been known that Israel has been stealing children for years, this is the video that I will make at another time. Proof of this happening now comes after the story of an Israeli soldier who went in and stole a baby girl, a Palestinian baby girl, from the family of the parents whom they had just killed, with the intention of bringing them back into Israel to give them to Israeli parents. In a interview on an Israeli radio station, a buddy of the soldier who ended up dying from wounds that he got in Gaza talks about how despite the atrocities that they have inflicted on Gaza, out of the goodness of his heart, his buddy kidnapped this Palestinian baby to care for her with the intentions of then transferring her to his Israeli friends who were looking to adopt a baby.
הוא שם את הלב שלו לפני זה, ועשה את המעשה הנכון, וזה הבן אדם.
רגע, לרגע פספסתי אותך, הוא מצא את התינוקת בוכה ומה הוא עשה איתה?
הוא החזיר אותה תינוקת עזתית, והוא החזיר אותה לארץ.
הביא את התינוקת הבוכה לארץ?
כן. דאג לה.
Very simply put, if you are still someone who is denying or refusing to call what is happening in Palestine to Palestinians a genocide, you are a genocide denier, and it likely comes from a place of racism. Regardless of how many times Western officials and political leaders want to deny what is happening to Palestine as a genocide, the guidelines have been set, and it has been proven time and time again that Israel is actively committing every single point of what it means to commit a genocide. And I feel that now would probably be a good time to remind everyone that genocides have always been denied while they are actively happening. It's time that that changes.